Matt, the ultimate lone wolf, the Vegeta to Tai's Goku, the rival, the best friend. Matt is going to be an interesting one to talk about. So let's have the conversation. Is Matt or Yamato an overrated character? For me growing up, I was a massive Tai fan. It seems you were either a Tai fan or a fan of Matt. There was hardly anyone who was a fan of both characters back in the day when we were kids. And if they were, they would still say, I like Tai, but I prefer Matt. Or I like Tai just a bit more than Matt. This was how the conversation was when we were growing up as kids. It's a classic anime rivalry that still to this day works so well. Rivalries are needed to enhance the stakes, and there's always an argument to be made from both ends. There is always another person's preference or point of view when it comes to a rivalry, which is good because it brings variety to a show or anything really. I mean, I don't know if you guys watch football or soccer for my American viewers. There was a footballing rivalry that captured the imagination between football fans around the world, and that is, who is a better football player, Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo? In tennis, you had that fierce rivalry between Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal. In Dragon Ball, the classic Goku or Vegeta. These are a few examples, and I can name many more rivalries that are similar to this. You can like both, but you always preferred one over the other. So for me, being such a massive Tai fan when I was a kid, and still am now to this day, I never truly appreciated Matt as a character growing up, especially when they were literally beating the shit out of each other. I would always root for Tai to win the fights between the two characters. Even in school, we always had that debate between War Greymon and Metal Garurumon. Who is cooler between the two and who would win in a fight? I'm sure you guys watching this video had these debates among your friends as well when you were kids, when you were watching the original series back in the day. So yeah, I was always on Tai's side, and I can't lie, I hated Matt because of this rivalry. And I'm sure many more hardcore Tai fans out there would agree with me that they probably hated Matt when watching Digimon as a kid. However, when talking about whether or not he is an overrated character, I feel the rivalry he had with Tai helped enhance his popularity with the fan base. It's literally yin and yang combination. For me personally, I started liking Matt after the first season. I feel his character progression is the best in terms of development of any Digidestined character through Adventure 02 all the way up to Digimon Adventure Tri. As of this recording, I haven't seen Last Evolution Kizuna, so I don't know how they handled his character in that film, and I know guys, that's a massive statement to be said that Matt had the best character development out of all the Digidestined after the original adventure, but it's true. Me personally, I was a massive Tai fan, and I never was a fan of Matt. I preferred Joe and Izzy over Matt. But then with Adventure 02, and especially in Digimon Adventure Tri, he really grew on me as a character. That version of Matt in those two seasons is what I wanted, and I believe because of this development and progression through Adventure 02 and Digimon Adventure Tri, he's probably one of the top 2 fan favorite characters in the Digimon Adventure franchise amongst all the fans. However, having said all of that, when looking back in the original Digimon Adventure, seeing Matt's character is very heartwarming to see as an adult, because when you're a kid and if you're a massive Tai fan, you're only seeing the show from Tai's perspective and how great Tai is as a character. So whenever Matt undermines him or starts a fight with him, you hate him with a passion. But this is when you're watching it as a kid. However, now as an adult watching it, and I'm sure many of you guys can relate to this as well, Matt's story is probably the most serious and most tragic. His family is divorced and he can't see his little brother that much. He admitted to Gabumon that he never allowed anyone to see him cry, which as a result, he pushed many people away and kept being distant to so many people. Look at how he separates himself from the group after that massive row with Tai during the Dark Masters saga. That is an example of that. Digimon's writing can be so dark, you almost wonder, is it meant for kids? Because the writers were essentially talking about how a broken family can affect a kid mentally, and with Matt's case, it was depression. He says to Gabumon, all he wants to do is cry. That's heavy, man. And especially for a kids show, you don't see characters like this, especially characters who are kids, to have feelings of depression and neglect. I think this part of Matt's character, that brutal backstory, watching it back as an adult gave me newfound respect for Matt. Even though he was in pain inside, he still made jokes and he tries to have a bit of banter with the rest of the group. I think the episode where Tai was introducing the Digidestined to their partner Digimon, when he came to introduce Matt, he straight up says, No autographs, please. It's these little witty moments and that quick humor that I like in Matt's character. That takes strength. You're going through a lot and you still have time to make jokes. That takes real strength to do. For me, the best part of Matt's character in the first season has to be his protectiveness of TK and the rest of the group. He cares about people's feelings. He's the type of guy to ask you how you're doing, how's your day been? Whilst Tai, I would say, is the guy coming up with a motive and a plan on what to do. That's the difference between the two characters. The episode where Gabumon digivolves into Garurumon for the first time, he swam. Let me remind you again, he swam across the river to distract Seadramon by himself in order to protect TK and the others. When he wants to protect someone, I can actually picture him doing a Wizardmon and sacrificing himself to protect the ones he loves. I think episode 23 of the original Digimon Adventure shows both the good and bad aspects of Matt's character. In this episode, we have Joe, who is in debt with Digitamamon, and because he keeps being clumsy and that little shit Demidevimon does his nasty tricks to keep Joe breaking things, which adds to more debt, Matt finds out about this, and instead of going back to TK, he decides to help Joe out and help him pay off his debt. This is the main positive of his character back in season 1, his willingness to help his friends, even though there is a certainty that he will screw himself over by helping that person out. Like in episode 3 when Seadramon nearly murdered him at sea when he was trying to protect everyone else. That's typical of Matt, and that's what he did in episode 23. He put himself into debt in order to help pay off what was initially Joe's debt. That's why he deserves the crest of friendship. He will literally put himself into debt for you. When Tai and TK found Matt and Joe, and when Tai asked for Matt to run away with them, he refused. He decided, no, I'm not doing that. I'm in debt and I want to pay off that debt. That's respect. He has honor and a code he gave to Digitamamon. He gave Digitamamon his word that they are going to pay off his debt, and instead of taking the easy way out and running away, he doesn't want to do that. He prefers to do it the proper way. That's leadership right there. Even when people say for you to do one thing, but you still stick by your guns. That's determination and a quality of a leader. However, we also see the bad aspects of Matt's character. Tai gets a lot of stick for being hot-headed. Make no mistake, guys, Matt is just as hot-headed as Tai, maybe even more. In this episode, because Joe was making so many mistakes, he snaps at Joe, and Tai, instead of believing Joe that it wasn't his fault, he instead blames him, which he should never have done. I didn't like that. It really rubbed me the wrong way. You're being held captive by this prick of a Digimon in his own restaurant. How can you not be suspicious of him rather than thinking your own friend is trying to snake you? It's in these little moments you see Matt's true inner anger burst out, and that's why he snaps at Tai as much as he did in the first season. There's a deep anger within him because of what's happening with his family, and when he thought that TK was preferring Tai over himself, that got to him badly. He's still a kid. He needs time to mature out of this phase, but you can understand why he gets angry at Tai and the others when he does. In the first season, he feels protecting TK is his life's main mission. And when he thought TK was preferring the others over him, his whole world just shattered and broke down. And the tears started coming, and we saw the true Matt. The Matt that is alone and is in desperate need for friends. That's why he got the crest of friendship. It's not only because he's such a loyal friend. I feel he needs friends more than anyone else in order for him to keep his sanity and not feel alone. Like I mentioned earlier, when he admitted to Gabumon all he wanted to do was cry, that was real and the true authentic version of Matt's character. It all just bursted like a bubble. He felt helpless and not needed anymore. That's the tragedy of Matt's character. That's why his development into eventually becoming a full-on leader in Digimon Adventure Tri was so beautiful to see. And in that moment in the Cave of Darkness, it was Gabumon that brought him out of that depression. I feel the digital world rewarded his loyalty to his friends with the crest of friendship. He was also the one to get Sora out of the Cave of Darkness, getting her out of her depression. This, I think, is the sole reason why I believe it was Sora and Matt who ended up together instead of Tai and Sora. And by the end of the first season, he accepted Tai as the leader, and that's when the true growth of his character started happening. In season 2, we barely saw him, so there's not really much to say, although you can tell he matured up so much since season 1. It's a shame really that we didn't see much of him. However, I do remember this one episode where Cody went out of his way to talk to Matt about TK and his anger issues. Matt told the story of Devimon to Cody. He's a lot more approachable to talk to and is easier to talk to as well, especially if you have Cody talking to you. Matt gave some good advice to Cody, although he nearly did end up beating up Davis early on in that season, so he clearly does still have some of that hot-headedness still. In season 2, we just mainly had that love triangle between himself, Sora and Tai, but even then it was barely shown on screen. In Digimon Adventure Tri, however, we saw what it seems like a character swap between Tai and Matt. Tai was being the passive one and Matt was being the one leading the charge and taking action. Honestly, for me, Tai wasn't the leader in Digimon Adventure Tri. It's a toss-up between Izzy and Matt on who was the leader of the group in Tri. Even though Matt admitted we needed Tai to snap back into reality in order for him to lead the group, majority of the time during Tri, it was Matt inspiring the team. He got angry at Nishijima when he thought he was holding back information. I like this version of Matt. He still had that cool edge about him, but he was being more of a leader on top of that. He is what Tai should have been in Tri. I don't know what they did with Tai's character. That's a future discussion for another video. Hey guys, this video was recorded and edited way before I watched the Last Evolution Kizuna movie. Sorry for taking so long to upload this video, but let me quickly mention my brief thoughts on Matt in Last Evolution Kizuna. In Tri, like I stated just before, I mentioned that he has become more of a leader. Well, in Last Evolution Kizuna, he did become that leader, taking charge and going after Kyotaro, as well as giving orders to the O2 cast in America to get background information on Kyotaro. There were moments in that film where Tai was asking him for advice, which tells us now that Matt is finally on the level with Tai as a leader of the group. I mentioned this point in the character portion of the Last Evolution Kizuna review, where it was Matt who gave the last word to Menowa when he said that life isn't preordained, which is what woke Menowa up out of a mad depression. Normally it would have been the main gogglehead, the main leader of the group, giving that killer inspirational line, but in Kizuna it was Matt who did it, signaling to us that he is in fact the leader of the Digidestined team and is Tai's equal. I go more in depth on both Tai and Matt's characters on our Last Evolution Kizuna review, so do go ahead and check it out. But yeah, for me, Matt just kept on blossoming as a character, and watching Digimon back as an adult, I realized how tragic his character really was. As a kid, of course, I hated him because I was such a big Tai fan, but seeing the trauma he went through and to then in Tri basically being the strong-headed one, and let's be honest, the leader of the group in Tri, really shows inner strength to grow into that person. That's why I say in terms of growth, he had it the best. He has a bit of Mimi in him as well, with his caring nature. He even shed a few tears when Myodisman killed Gatsuman and Pumpkinman. He wanted revenge for what Myodisman did to them. And that's why I say, for me, he is not overrated. He is one of the best characters in the franchise, and seeing his journey of growth is the reason for me he's not overrated. Anyway guys, thank you for watching this video. Comment down below if you think Matt is an overrated character or not, and give me the reasons why you think he is overrated or underrated. And guys, let me know who you want to see next in this overrated, underrated series. Please click that notification bell to stay up to date with our content, and as always, care for nothing.